Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is John, and I'm the founder of the indie game development company, Odysee Games. I've been making games for 4 years now using Unreal Engine, Unity, and Godot, and never has there been a better time to become an indie game developer and start your own game studio. COVID-19 has swept around the world and affected us all in one way or the other. There have been a lot of negative things to come out of this pandemic, but with so many people working from home or not working, unfortunately, and going to school from home, the gaming industry has just skyrocketed, right? The sale of games has increased, the sale of consoles have increased, the sale of computers have increased, and just the amount of people playing games in general has increased. The amount of potential customers has grown to levels never before seen in the history of the gaming industry. Not to mention the release of the next generation of consoles and the next graphics cards being released from Nvidia and AMD. Both of these events, they provide the infrastructure required for game developers to turn their wildest dreams into a game. So I've mentioned several key things in a short amount of time, all pertaining to how now is the best time to become an indie game developer, and I want to take some time to dive into those in a little bit more depth, right? So when we compare the gaming sales from 2019 to 2020, we can see a huge jump in sales, especially right when COVID-19 starts spreading and places start locking down. In 2019, 16.3 million consoles were sold from January to July. And in 2020, 22.2 million consoles were sold in the same time frame from January to July, right? So that's a 36% increase in sales. Then when we look at the global PC shipments, we can also see a huge spike in sales. When looking at the year-on-year growth in the first quarter of 2020, we can see the demand for PCs was actually dropping. Then as soon as COVID-19 started spreading, the shipments of PCs jumped about 10% on the year-over-year growth for the second quarter of 2020 and 13% on year-over-year growth for the third quarter. And that 2020 third quarter growth actually beat a 10-year growth record. That's crazy. When we look a little deeper and see numbers of monthly active users on Xbox Live, we can see that it went from 65 million monthly active users in quarter 4 of 2019 to 90 million monthly active users in quarter 1 of 2020. And then on Steam, looking at April, we can see the monthly breakdown of users. It went from an average of 16 million daily users in March to 23 million daily users in April. Again, these types of numbers have never been seen before. But it isn't just the amount of potential customers that should be motivating you to start right now. It's the amount of free assets that you can use to make your games. This is a no to low cost entry business that not enough people are taking advantage of. Now, as I said earlier, I've used several different game engines. When I first started making games, I started off using Unreal Engine. Then from there, I went over to Unity, which is merely for personal preferences. And I even began to play around with Godot for a little while, just to ensure that I was using the right game engine to fit my needs. So each of these game engines, they all have their own marketplace where you can download assets to use for your games. And some of these assets are free and some you have to pay to use. For Unreal Engine, they do monthly giveaways for their top free assets. And they have hundreds of other free assets as well that you can use for your games. These include 3D models, sound effects, animations, demo scenes, vegetation, and again with the free assets, they even have a skill tree builder if you want to build an RPG game. RPG, doesn't need to be RPG game. Unity also has hundreds of free assets. This is just one menu where they display their top free assets, and you can get your standard assets, which is vehicles, materials, objects, and player controllers. You also have visual scripting with Bolt, RPG character controllers, assets to make your game multiplayer, and vector third-person controller, low-poly assets, and just so much more. Then looking at Godot's marketplace, which I'm not really familiar with, but looking around, we can see they also have a bunch of free assets. You got first-person controllers, GUI frameworks, Oculus integration, levels of detail, and third-person shooter templates. There's also third-party websites to get assets from. You have Open Game Art, which is a big one. They have 2D and 3D art, sound effects, textures. ArtStation is another popular website where artists go to display their art and sell it. There's many free and paid assets here, and the art here is usually like top level quality, right? You will see many AAA game studios posting jobs on here to either attract future employees or people to act as independent contractors for them. And then Reddit. You cannot mention indie game development without mentioning Reddit. There are tons of resources on here, whether it's knocking around ideas, asking for help, sharing your work to get feedback, and just so much more. Indie Dev is a good place to start. You can get an idea of when game jams are, see what other people are working on, and just network with other people. Indie gaming is a big one, where you can do the same as indie dev and just see what other people are doing. These are also great places to start building a following for the work you're doing. If you post on these pages, you have hundreds to thousands of people who are all scrolling and can potentially see your game. And if you're having issues with coming up with ideas for making games, there's the subreddit Game Ideas. People will post up game ideas looking for people to make for them and others to give their opinions on the game idea. And you can figure out if that's something you want to do. The forum also provides a little walkthrough on how to start with an idea and let others give input in a fairly organic way, right? You don't want to essentially direct how you want other people to input on the idea, because you could be missing something great. These resources are around for you to use, and people want you to use them. With the amount of free resources available and the amount of people gaming now, I just don't know why you didn't stop this video already and start making games and start building your indie game development company. I like to think of it as a no-lose situation, right? If you succeed, you have a great job, you're running your own business. And if you don't succeed, you're not out of anything, right? It's free to make these games. These are free assets. You can publish your game for free on Good Old Games and itch.io. I don't know what you're waiting for, right? If you like what I'm covering, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. I'll be covering topics like this at least once a week, and we'll be going over different aspects of running an indie game development company. There's no reason you can't do this too. So if you have any comments or questions, post them on the comment section and I'll get to them.